Hey everybody, Matt here for Imagine Then Make. Thanks for stopping by. Well, this is part 12 in our series of videos teaching complete beginners how to program using Python. If you missed any of the earlier episodes, just check the video description for some links. All right, so we made it to part 12. Wow, and how far we've come. I wanted to make a quick little wrap-up video just to show you how far we've come. If you watched the whole thing, I greatly appreciate it. If you didn't and you want to learn how to program in Python, I worked very hard at creating the simplest to understand Python videos that you could walk through, just watch what I do, and then try it yourself. And I all but guarantee that when you get to the very end, you have learned something about how to program in Python. And if you go through all the videos, you'll wind up with a simple guess the number type game with data validation, and you also have learned how to test it using the debugger that comes with Python. So that's really substantial, significant. Starting with the very first program that we wrote, it was a whopping 2 lines long, just print statements, learning how to print some stuff on the screen. You have to know how to do that. And then after that, we developed some more vocabulary in our Python knowledge. And we also learned how to import external modules. In this case, we were starting to write the simple, guess the number game. We needed to create a random number, so we imported the random module in order to get that random number. So we created a random number. We put some more print statements on the screen to explain to the user of the game what was going on, understand what they're looking at. And then we went through, we developed a while loop, and we set some variables, and we used some if-else type commands for logical control and flow of the game. But we were missing at this point data validation, which I marked right here with a comment, add input checking here. So it was the next thing that we took on was creating a data validation sort of test program. And this took me more than a minute to create. I had to do some thinking. And primarily what I had to do was discover this isNumeric method, which we discussed during that episode. There probably are some other methods that would work in this spot as well, but isNumeric is the one I found first. So that's the one I used. So we created some data validation type logic with the intention of adding it to our guessing game. And that's what we did in the next version of the game. We sort of integrated the data validation code, which I just showed you, into the guessing game code. And you can see now we're starting to get a little bit longer. Okay, so the volume of commands and comments, which are always great to have. So you can look at your code a month, a year, 10 years later and have some idea of what you were trying to do at the time. So our programs have now grown beyond the initial 2 lines of print statements into, what are we up to? About 80 lines or so of code. Still not huge, but a far cry from 2 lines, right? And there's quite a bit of stuff in here that you would learn should you choose to build one of these games. And then finally, we kind of, in the last episode, we took a look at using the Python debugger, which comes with Python. And I think in that episode, that very last episode, I mentioned that I found this a little bit clunky to learn how to use, but after using it for a little bit, I think it's very worthwhile. And I tried to demonstrate it so that you could follow along and try using it with your own code. So we've come a long way in the 11 or so episodes. There were a few other things that I wanted to mention that I don't think I mentioned in the earlier episodes, so I thought I would do that now. All right, so one thing I wanted to point out, and I actually honestly don't remember if I mentioned it before in any of the other episodes. So let's take our source code here. This is the final version of the guessing game. And if we go ahead and run this, so there's our familiar guess the number 0 to 100. I'll put in my typical guess of 50, and it says your guess is too high, guess a smaller number, and I'm there at the prompt. If I go up to the shell menu right here, and I click on interrupt execution, the shortcut key for that is Control C. If I click on that, you can see that I have interrupted the flow of the game. Okay, and I'm down here at a Python interpreter prompt. So now if I was to print, I happen to know that the random number that was generated right here is stored in a variable called r_num. So if I wanted to print what that number is or what that value is, I can do that right at the Python interpreter, and there it is, 46. And then if I want to print out what I actually guessed, so there's 50. So I guessed 50 up here when I was actually running the game. When we interrupted the game, the computer still holds on to the values of the variables that were being used by the program. So it's just another way to investigate what's going on with your program. If you do a Control C or you click on this interrupt execution menu item, then you can use Python interactively and print out the values of different variables to see where you stand. Okay, so in the last episode when we were playing with the debugger, I tried to demonstrate that the type of data that's stored from the input command is a string. Input commands always collect string type data. String is a kind of data type, okay? Integers are another kind of data type. That's the numbers we've been working with. In our simple guess the number type game, we've only been working with two data types. One is strings and one is integers, whole numbers, numbers without decimal places. Okay, so there is a method that allows us to check what data type any variable is, and it's called type. So you can see I've already entered it in here. I'm running the Python interpreter, so I just type the command type, open parentheses, guess_num. Guess_num is what's collected from the input statement. And what I just said, I hope you caught it, is that input statements always collect string data. So guess_num is indeed a string data type. So when I type under parentheses, guess_num, close parentheses, and enter, what the interpreter responds with is class is of type string. Okay, and if I do the same exercise with r_num, which indeed we know is a number, right? Because that's a random number that we generate way up here at the top of the program. When we press enter, we see that r_num is of type int, short for integer. Okay, so in the debugger, we could see that guess_num was a string, even though we type in what looks like a number. And at that time, I think I typed in probably 50. And in the debugger, you can see that 50 is surrounded by single quotes, indicating that it's of a type string. And with this type method right here, you can investigate. It's another way to investigate what kind of type, data type, your different variables are. So keep that in the back of your mind. I'd find it immensely useful. All right, and I just want to leave one more little tip for you or comment, and that is that the input statement that we used in our guess the number game, it sits and waits until the user actually presses a key on the keyboard. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. If you aren't using a debugger, which allows you to step through your code, you can use the input statement as a way to kind of stop executing your program and restart executing your program just by pressing a key on the keyboard. So it's under user control. That's pretty useful. Now, we haven't really had to use that at all, but I just wanted to mention that here because in future programs, we might wind up doing that. So if to try and demonstrate, if I restart my program here, okay, and so it's sitting at this input prompt, guess the number 0 to 100. We've seen it hundreds of times at this point. We're right here in our program. And you may have noticed that it'll sit there basically forever, waiting for the user to press a key. Now imagine if you had a different program and you wanted to temporarily suspend execution of the program at some strategic spot, okay? You could put in an input command and maybe as a variable to store the value of the input, you know, some kind of dummy variable like, you know, I can't even think of one right now, but how about just the word dummy? Or DV for dummy variable? I don't know, something, okay? So that it will sit there waiting, the program will just sit there waiting for the user to press a key before it continues. So instead of, for a prompt here that goes with the input command, you might want to say something like, press any key to continue. So that's turned out to be immensely useful over the years, writing different programs on different systems. A lot of times we didn't have access to sophisticated debuggers or other ways to kind of investigate what was going on with the program at different spots. So entering in some sort of a command that suspends execution until the user does something, presses a button on a keyboard or something, then being able to do that allows for some more debugging to happen. So I just wanted to mention that it might be something to sort of keep in the back of your mind if you need to suspend execution of your program so you can help debug it. All right, so I'm going to call it a wrap on this series of videos teaching complete beginners how to program in Python. I've had a lot of fun and have actually learned quite a few things in the process of putting these videos together for you. I hope you had a chance to watch them. I hope you had a chance to do some coding on your own machine. If you have any questions or comments, as always, you can leave them on any of the videos and I'll be sure to reply promptly. Now for the next series of Python videos I'm planning, we're going to do a few things different. First thing is we're going to pick up the pace. Okay, so the pace for these first videos was extremely slow, trying to give the absolute beginner a chance to understand what I was saying and replicate what they see me do on the screen. Okay, the next series of videos is going to be at a faster pace, and what we're going to be doing is investigating drawing automated lines right on the screen. So that should be fun. I hope to see you there.